Hello everybody, how's it going? Squeezilla here and I hope you're all well. And you join me today in your Naval Forces again. Yes, back for Naval Forces. Surprise, surprise. Computer, why are you making so much noise? Be quiet, please. Anyway, Naval Forces. We are in open beta. We are now in update 1.83, Masters of the Sea. We have the British Navy. We have open beta testing for everybody to join in and enjoy naval combat with their reserve boats and get absolutely slaughtered. We have, veteran players with their destroyers, and yeah, okay. So, yeah, let's start off with looking through the updates, first of all. I think that's a big thing to look through. So, I'm only going to be talking about the naval aspect of this for now. Naval fleet model damage, model characteristics and weaponry changes. Multiple vessels now have side and bow mounted launchers as modifications. They can launch by pressing R, just basically depth charge launchers or mortars. New armour types have been added. Now naval vessels have bulletproof, fragmentation proof, rolled or cast homogeneous armour depending on the vessel. The fragmentation effect has been reworked. Spread and damage have become more realistic, depending on the ammo weight and shard type. The resulting fragmentation may be different in weight, number and total damage. All shard spreads according to diagram for a damage sector. Additionally, one round may produce shards that vary in their weight and penetration power. So basically they've changed the way the rounds work. So basically, although this has got a decent amount of explosives in it, got 2 kilograms of explosives on board, the 128mm caliber shell, relatively big shell, there's not much shell on there. So the shell fragmentation is not going to be a huge amount. However, if it explodes on the boat, it's going to cause lots of fragmentation from bits of the boat, in theory. So you're going to be better off using a slightly thicker shell, slightly heavier shell with a bit more mass to it, because it's going to create more fragmentation. Because currently, when you're shooting at, say, patrol boats with these shells, you don't get a huge amount of damage. We see their fragmentation, and we do get some good damage there, but it's not, it's not mega. Now, if that was a slightly heavier shell, then there might have been a bit more fragmentation. Now we're going to get a good hit there, and as you can see, we got 2 shells hitting on that boat, and 123mm into a wooden boat. I don't see that boat surviving. So unfortunately there is still the balance issue of patrol boats being a little bit too tough against destroyer shells. However, saying that, for a gameplay balance perspective, that is possibly a good thing. Naval vessel DMs have been reworked, damage models. Artillery, upper structure, torpedo launchers and other deck-based components are now more vulnerable to explosions, shards and direct hits. Any unarmoured upper structure can be damaged, so they won't function even with MG fire. Talk about this in a moment. Internal modules may also be damaged by explosions, kinetic damage, shards and fire in different situations. Thus, boiler compartments are more vulnerable to direct hits and shard damage, unlike controls that are much more vulnerable to explosions. So, they're saying all this new stuff has been implemented, where basically, there's more kinetic damage, there's more damage when you get hit by a very heavy explosive shell. And I've not really noticed any difference. I've not noticed any big changes in the way the damage models work. And as I said, I've not noticed any changes in the way when you hit a PT boat with a big heavy shell, it still doesn't really do that much damage to it. As I said, like a wooden boat being hit by those shells without explosive mass are turned into matchsticks, basically. Yes, they could possibly survive one hit hitting the water, but if it's a direct hit, that's it, it's over. So, there is still that problem. Like now, minion boat might survive a bit better, but still, a small boat is going to get a lot of damage, and there's going to be a lot of fragmentation to the crew, and it just doesn't really seem to be working like that. As I said, I'm sort of on the fence on this matter, because just small PT boats do need the ability to withstand a salvo from these destroyers to be competitive, but they want it to be realistic, and that's not realistic. Engines situationed in drowned compartments as well as transmissions, ammunition rooms will be damaged or become unavailable until the water's been pumped out of the section. That's a good idea. That's good. Good to have. We've just blown up an S-38 there. As you can see, the damage from these shells is not great. You know, it just doesn't do a huge amount of damage. You can see from the X-ray there. Survivability and resistance towards types of damage have been reworked for sections occupied by the crew. An explosion or dense fragmentation will inflict much greater damage than a single AP round that penetrates through a vessel without internal fragmentation. Now, this is something that I find interesting because it seems like absolute bollocks, because from what I've found, AP rounds do a lot more damage than HE rounds, which is just doesn't make any sense at all, especially when you're firing against light little wooden boats. An AP round is just going to go flying straight through there and cause a little fragmentation, whereas an HE round is going to explode and cause splinters. So again, this is something that is just a bit wonky. Large vessels can survive a hit by a lighter torpedo, SET-40 for example, however they still suffer severe damage. This is something that should be absolutely there, and it was there. You know, you could survive torpedoes in closed beta. But they have reworked the damage model now, so one really cool thing is when a torpedo hits the front of the bow of the ship, the whole bow will be taken off and destroyed. If it hits the ammunition, for instance, the whole bow will just explode, gone. And that's kind of cool. There are some cool damage models in there, but it's again something that it's very hard to model. You know, like a lot of these boats would take a torpedo to the bow and survive. And then sail home. You know, it was quite common. There were quite a few destroyers that made it back after torpedo hits. But currently, they're not sort of working that great, and they're just a bit iffy still, and it's a real shame, because as I said, it's not working currently. Damage model has been reworked for the German SF-40s. The crew has been moved to the upper deck and artillery deck. Upper deck structure is now protected with 10mm of rolled armour that contains most of the crew. However, the control cabin remains unprotected. Yeah, the SF-40 is now stronger, which is just what everybody wants to hear, I'm sure. You just saw there that shell just hit right behind the LS. Hull broken, now it's hit. But very close hits with those shells, and again, fragmentation should be something that causes damage there, and it still doesn't work that way. All MGs and autocannons up to 20mm now have stabilisation by using the gunner's shoulder rest. Correct radio cabin dimensions have been added for all vessels. The crew is placed depending on the vessel type and historical data. A new criteria for vessel destruction has been added. When massive damage, for example, is received, an explosion is received, sorry. It depends on the vessel size and class. They may still be destroyed even if their total crew is not lower than 5, blah blah blah. The MVK-161 Model 1944 Soviet armour boat has received its historical camo. The German LS has been renamed to the LS3. Maximum speed for the K2 cannon boot has been changed from 30 to 18.6 knots. According to historical data, that's really going to hurt that boat. Looping torpedoes are around the same area by launching during a sharp turn has been fixed, so you can no longer do the gun-fu with torpedoes. And the appearance of fuel tanks in X-ray view has been visually improved and is now the same for all ships. Okay, so what we're going to talk about right now is balance. So that's all the changes that they put in and stuff like that. There's going to be changes coming through constantly because we're in open beta, but right now we're just going to talk about the balance. And as you've seen here, I've been annihilating things. Now, I don't have a fire extinguisher because, you know, FP is still not unlocked straight away on boats, so you still just burn to death. If you're having a great game, you still just burn to death if you get set fire. So that's still a massive problem, but that's not going to get fixed. So we complain all we want about that, but they're never going to fix it because, well, basically, we've talked about that since the beginning of the game, and they've not listened to us. So we basically still have so many problems involved. Now, we have just died there because of the fire, basically, so we just burnt down. But we managed to get 4 kills, 1 assist, 3 assists, and 1 capture point. Now we're going to jump into our patrol boat. Destroyers are still ungodly powerful. They still just annihilate everything. I'll talk about that in a moment. I actually have a little bit of an add-on for this video. AI gunners are still ridiculous. They still can just, they still just shoot through things. There are so many things that haven't been fixed now, and it's stuff that should have been fixed in closed beta, and it just hasn't because they simply haven't listened to the community. Basically, autocannons are still the way to go. And we had a crash. Oh, great. Just what we wanted to see. Alright, so, yeah, I'll just finish talking quickly and then we'll head to the post thing. But basically, autocannons are still the way to go. I'm going to stop here and I'm going to head to the post-battle section where I'm going to talk a little bit more on balance, especially with destroyers. And sorry about that crash there. Anyway, we are here in the post results. I've got 2 sections for this, so I'm just doing a first quick one because there has been a recent update come through. Requirements for rank 4 research vessels has been changed. USA has gone from 2 to 5, Germany from 2 to 5, and Russia from 2 to 3. So basically, to get towards the Emden now, it used to be just well, they're saying 2, but it's always been 3 on my system. Because if it was 2, then I would have been able to get it already. But that's always good. So anyway, basically they've decided, oh wait, no, it's too quick for everybody to get their cruisers, because people want to play with the cruisers. People want to play with the big boats. They really, really want to play with the big boats. And Gaijin said that this system was going to allow people to get towards that much quicker so they could actually play what they want to play, rather than having to grind through things they don't want to use. So now, unfortunately, you need to grind through things you don't want to use. If you have the premium destroyer, for instance, you need to grind through 3 ships now instead of 2, or 1, as the case may have been. So that's really a frustrating thing again. Look, the way they've set up the research is just, it's the same as if you were researching a tank. People want to get to, say, the Abrams, but they have to go through all the crap that they don't want to use, first of all. They said that this mode was going to be much easier, so it would allow you to research the vessels you want, instead of having to grind through things you don't want. And it doesn't work. It doesn't work like that. You still have to grind through boats that you're never going to use. You're never going to use these 2 R boats, for instance, because they're bloody useless. The VS-10 is probably not going to get used that often because the 15mm MG151s are not that great, especially when you're at that BR, because most boats have a little bit of armour, and if they've got armour, you start to suffer. So, luckily you don't have to grind through that at the moment, but you have to grind for the cannon boot. So you need to, luckily it's only 36k research points, and it's actually, relatively armoured boat, so it's pretty decent, but you still need to get the Type 1934A as well, so you've got to research an extra 60, 70, 80, 90, about 110, 120k research points to it. Luckily it's not too bad because, you get a fair amount of research points in Navy. If you don't go for, as long as you don't use a destroyer, you're fine. If you just go for pretty much German 2.7, you're going to get those research points pretty much easily. Or if you just sail a destroyer into the spawn camp like a complete dickhead. But for things like America, now, you've got to go through the Clemson line, and they're both pretty poor boats. They're not bad, but they're not great ships. They're pretty basic destroyers from a time gone by. The Farraguts, for instance, as well, like Farragut Fletcher, and this means basically if you don't have a premium, you've got to unlock all of the American boats before you can unlock the cruiser. So you've got to research a lot more research points than Germany, I think, because these are a bit higher in their research cost. So you need to go through a lot more. Russia, of course, only has 3 because, well, they don't have that many bloody destroyers. But luckily they have lowered the PR-183 slightly, but it's still 75k research points for a PT boat that you have to unlock. The PR-159 is not terrible, but it's still a relatively small sort of Corvette style ship. The France is a very small destroyer. It's more of a sort of torpedo boat, the Germans would have called it. It's a very early destroyer, and that's the thing. It's, you know, it's not great. It's, you know, it's not bad, but it's not going to be absolutely great. Because it's a bit low profile, it does help. But you've got to unlock all 3 of those boats now, and that's a lot of research points involved, a lot of time involved to get there, so it's a big old grind just to get to something you might want to play. You know, it is really making it hard to get to those cruisers, and it's still very, very frustrating. The British have 5 as well, so if you don't have premium the Haida, you've got to unlock all of the destroyers again. And, you know, that's not bad because at least you have the destroyers to play with. But people don't really want to be playing destroyers. They want to be playing the larger ships. People want to play larger boats. Like, basically, PT boats are just like a sort of training ground or a place where you have to suffer. You know, it's like being put in prison for a bit of time. So you can't really enjoy it. And then you can finally get to the bigger boats, which are, you know, a lot more fun and interesting. So yeah, it is a bit problematic. Anyway, we'll move on to the next subject. So I will see you in 1 second. As I said, sorry, this video is going to be a little bit cut up and a little bit cluttered. It's not going to be too flowing, but I just needed to get all the information across and have a good rant, basically. Okay, just getting this little bit of recording done very quickly, but just here you see 17 kills. This guy just sat in the spawn all game in a destroyer. Like, that's naval forces. It's fundamentally broken still, and the devs are still not listening to us. Yeah. It's shit like this is destroying this mode, and will destroy it, because it's just ludicrous. You know, I was playing a destroyer game there. I was going out into the ocean area and fighting other destroyers. You know, so look, get very few kills, obviously, because you're going out there alone almost. And then you get, you know, dickweeds like this that just sit in the spawn area of the PT boats with a Fletcher and just annihilates them all. And there's nothing you can really do. Now, I went and destroyed him with torpedoes, of course, but there were so many sort of newer players that were just getting absolutely ruffle-stomped. I mean, you look, like, we lost pretty much all of these guys because of this one dickhead. And yeah, you can say it's a tactic for the game, but no, it shouldn't be. It's broken. It would be like you going into a reserve game in tanks with a mouse. You know, they really can't do much against you, and you're just going to annihilate them. You know, there's no skill involved here. It is just pure sitting there in a destroyer. You know, the 7 enemy assists he got. I didn't even cap a zone. This guy was just sat in the spawn, you know. It's broken. Like, that's all I can say, is this gameplay is broken. And also, just quickly as well, you know, this is sort of like a little bit extra on the end here, just as a sort of finishing off piece. They have changed the 1924 destroyer as well. There's no actual notes on that I can find in the update, which is great. You know, it's typical Gaijin changelog, you know, of we're going to change something without telling people. But basically, the 1924 actually used to have armour, and now it has no armour. So this was a really decent little boat in closed beta, because the armor protection of it was only about 17 mil of armor. You know, it wasn't much, but it gave you some decent protection, and now that's completely gone. There's no armor at all on this, which I find hard to believe, because I know for a fact that these gun turrets are at least 10 to 20 mil of armor. So what, are they just not showing the armor on the destroyers? Is it still there? I don't know. But it's something that they've changed without sort of saying to anybody. So it's fun stuff like that. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed the video as much as you can. Look, Naval is still in a bit of a dire situation, in all honesty. With the open beta now in effect, hopefully Gaijin are going to listen to us and actually put changes in that are recommended. But in all honesty, I don't think they will. They don't listen to anybody. They've not listened to us in the closed beta. They've released a game in open beta now without fixing any of the fundamental problems. The balance is still horrendous. You can still just get a flak barge, the SF-40. This is the thing you get because it's got so many 37mm on board. You know, when you've got the auto cannons, that's what really gives you good, you know, easy time. Plus, it has the armor, which can deflect, you know, small arms fire. Of course, your captain's going to be taken out because he's in this wooden box at the front, but it doesn't matter because all you do is you just sit there AFK near, or you just press forward slightly, go to the middle of the map, sit there AFK, and switch to basically the 20mm gun up the top here. You use this gun up here as your main. Oh, sorry, the 37mm. Sorry, yeah, you switch to the 37mm as your main gun, and leave these to AI, and these will take out pretty much every boat in the game. At the BR, it's ridiculous, and there's nothing you can really do against it because you can't get close to it. Now, they say torpedoes, but if you can't really get close enough or in a position to launch torpedoes, they're no use to you. It's just everything is wrong. Like, honestly, there is so much wrong with this that I've tried to go into as much detail as possible, but I'm pretty sure I missed things out. Yeah, it's bollocks, and it still is, unfortunately. And I don't want it to be. I want this to be good. This is the whole thing, is I want this mode to be good. And if you watch my videos in the past, I have said I want this mode to be good. I've called out all of the problems, yet they never get fixed. The AI gunners are still overpowered, especially for anti-aircraft. They still shoot through islands. Destroyers are still basically, you know, shooting from 20 odd kilometers away from each other, which is kind of what the gunplay should be, but they're shooting from behind islands where they can't actually see the enemy ship at all. They can't even see a smoke trail or things like that, and it's just like, that is an impossible shot to pull off. You know, there's no spotting. You basically just hit hammer X as much as you can, get a target in sight, and then away you go. Boom, you've got a ship to kill. So yeah, as you see, I've played for a bit. You know, I'm up to rank 3 now. Almost got onto the Emden research, which I will start doing, and we're not looking forward to that. But it's going to go quickly at least. But the thing is, it is still just broken, and there's some ships that are absolutely worthless, such as the R-boots, the Rumbut R41 and R130. Now, the 301 is actually decent, but everything else is just useless there. The S38 is not great. It's not bad, but it's not great. The 20mm gun only has a small amount of ammo, so you do tend to struggle with that. The S100s are, you know, pretty deadly. If you get into a position where you're basically fighting lots of enemies that can't really damage you in a destroyer, you will just be godly. And, you know, if you are a dickhead and you go spawn camping in the enemy spawn in a destroyer, you're going to make, you know, tons of research and profit, because you're going to get, you know, 15, 20 kills in a game without too much problem. The same goes for the SF-40. But there's no skill involved in that. Basically, you can just put your gunners on AI control, walk away, go make a cup of tea, come back, and you've basically unlocked a new ship. So where's the balance in that? Where's the skill involved in that gameplay? There is none. There is no skill in just sailing into a spawn point and just annihilating everything. Yeah, I sound very salty at the moment, I'm sure, but there is no skill involved in that. And it basically, a team could play with, you could have the best players in game on one team, and they'll lose because simply they don't have the right boats. You have that problem with some of the American boats, for instance. The Nasty's pretty decent, but I see a lot of people complaining and struggling with it because the front, basically they have trouble when they're sailing front on, because they've got the twin 20mm and then the 50 cal, but they're not sort of using it in the correct way. They basically sort of control these guns. No, you don't control these, you leave these to the AI and you just control the 40mm at the back and you will have a good day. Again, very little skill involved in that sort of gameplay, which is really unfortunate. And as I said, if you get yourself a destroyer, you just go and sit in the spawn, and the guy in that last game had a Fletcher, as I said, so obviously he's done some serious grinding in the past couple of days to get that, but the way he's been grinding it is just by sitting in the spawns, obviously, and just annihilating all of the enemy players and all of the new players as well. Which is not good, because new players are going to get very frustrated. When you're actually a new player in a G5 or a D3 or the OD200, you're getting in matches where you're fighting things like the the MBK PR186, the S100s. You're getting boats that just annihilate you and you can't really fight back with, and you'll have people getting games where they make 10, 15 kills in a game because simply they're just fighting reserve boats, and there's nothing these reserve boats can do against it. It's really, really unfair, and I feel bad for anyone that's starting out new. The British boats, of course, when you're starting out in those, you're going to have some serious problems. There are some very good boats in there, though, that hopefully we'll be able to fight back, but then there's going to be power creep as well, because there's going to be new boats introduced. I think the Flower class, I've not actually seen any of the corvettes out in action yet, but this thing looks like it's going to be fairly decent. It does lack armour though, but the guns on it, they're going to be decent for sort of longer range engagements. They're going to struggle in close range engagements though with PT boats, and that's the area where these boats absolutely get their asses kicked. But with those 102mm guns, depending on the fire rate, that's the big thing. That's the thing that makes the difference. And if you've got a fast fire rate, then you can absolutely annihilate people. Of course, they have a decent high explosive shell on them as well, and this can do some serious damage. But again, smaller boats, you're hitting with these 100mm plus shells. You're hitting reserve boats, for instance. Let's look at the MTB here. No, customization, that's what I want. You're hitting them, say, square on in the middle with a 100mm shell. That boat's going to be turned into a fine powder, but it's not. They survive the hits, which, on a gameplay perspective, makes sense, but on a realistic standpoint, doesn't. And they want it to be realistic, they say, and it just isn't. It just, as I said, I don't think they know what they want to do, and I don't think they know what to do, because the way they've set it up now is it's so unbalanced, and it's going to remain unbalanced until they split it up to better BRs, or they basically, just change the way it works. Have games where you're using these boats in, say, river areas or smaller maps or things like that, where you've got these fast boats that you can use, and then you've got your larger boats out in larger maps where it would be somewhat fair. But yeah, at the moment, as I said, they don't know what they're doing. Alright, well, on that dire news, I will be heading off. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to know what you think, especially, there's a lot of new players in Open. Let me know your experience as well, because I'd love to hear from you on that, because obviously, I'm old curmudgeon. You know, I've sort of been doing this for a long time, and you know, I've grown weary of it. But I'd love to get some fresh perspective on it. From what I've heard so far, it's not been good. A lot of people are having troubles with it, but let me know in the comments below what you think. And look, as I said, it can be really good. I've had some games where it's been fantastic, but then I've had some games where it's been dire. Alright, well on that note, I'm going to head off. Have a lovely day, and I will be back with you soon for more naval updates, and also other updates as well. Please feel free, please feel free to subscribe to the channel. I would love to have you on board, and hit the little bell icon, you know, the usual thing that every YouTuber says. But no, subscribe to the channel. I'd love to have you on board. I'm aiming to get to 500 subscribers by the end of the year. I'd love to do that. I'd be very happy with that. I've been doing this for a long time now. If some of you have been with me since the very start, way back when. I do plan on doing some more history of videos as well. It's just been a bit of a busy time for me at the moment, but I will be sort of getting things back to slight normality soon. So yeah, I'd love to have you on board. Please feel free to subscribe, and yeah, come on board. Thanks so much for watching, and have a lovely day. Bye bye.
Chris Redfield. Jill Valentine. Barry Burton. Rebecca Chambers. Scree Ziller. Steven Sticks. Albert Wesker. Resident Evil.